What is biomedical science? How can you survive a bachelor thesis? And how can technology impact scientific research? Well, let's find out.
I guess it really fascinated me how such a tiny thing can potentially kill so many people. Sometimes you're like, oh, I really don't want to study, but then it's like, oh, I have to, do this for the people. Like a massive amount of men just going in, and you would be like, oh, that's...
My name is Maya. I study at the University of Twente in the Netherlands, and today we have our first online guest. We're going virtually to the other side of the channel, to England, to talk with Melinda. She recently finished her Biomedical Science bachelor's and is doing a year in computing. This is the Gen Z in STEM podcast. I'm your host, Marjorie, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's get to it. So, Melinda,
Hi.
You've studied biomedical science, and now you're doing computing. But first of all, what is biomedical science?
Okay, so I mean, it's obviously a very hard thing to summarize, but I would say that mainly it's the study of the human body, but it focuses on the understanding of the mechanisms of the diseases and developing ways to diagnose, treat and prevent those diseases. So it's mainly like a lab-based work kind of thing, Yeah, that's broadly what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it has quite a bit of labs. So then do you remember, because you finished more than a year ago.
Exactly. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Do you remember a bit what a week could look like when you studied?
So yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on the year. So I would say that in stage 1, which is our first year, it would be I think all the modules were very general. So we would do things like evolution and genetics, which doesn't seem to be very relevant to biomed, but it's obviously a lot of cool things. So we would have a lab session every 2 weeks, and then we would have modules like human physiology, which you would just study about things like different types of cells, for example, in tissues and that sort of thing, really basic things, because it was just the base for everything that was coming next in the next years. Obviously in stage 2 and stage 3, it was a bit different because we had different modules and it was more specific, I guess, to actual human health and diseases. So it changed a bit over the next 2 years. But yeah, the whole lab thing every 2 weeks was still the same every single year.
Okay, and you did start sort of during COVID?
I did, unfortunately, yes.
But did you still manage at some stage to go to the lab? And what did you maybe like about going to the lab, or how was it like?
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard because in first year, again, we were told to leave after 3 months. So I only had 3 months worth of experience, I would say, in the labs, which was not a lot. So when I went back in second year, I felt really unprepared. So did everyone else in my year. Realistically, I don't think anyone from my year had enough lab sessions because they didn't really make up for the past lost 6 months worth of labs lost. So it was hard, obviously, but they tried to implement things like they reduced the amount of people that could go in a lab and that sort of thing, So we did end up doing very basic things, but I felt like I had to relearn everything every year almost, because we weren't going as often as we should. So it was a bit unfortunate, but we've finished now, so we'd made it somehow.
Even if it was basic, what would you actually do? Do you test certain things? Do you look at anatomy? I don't know what happens.
Yeah, no, it's we had weekly labs where we would do very general things. For example, every year we would have to pipette water, literally just pipetting water, just to practice, So it was very repetitive and quite fun, honestly. But then obviously it depended on our coursework. So for the specific coursework, we had different lab things we had to do. For example, hematology, which was in my third year, I think. We were looking at blood cells underneath a microscope. So we had to get rats blood, and we had to learn how to prep the slides. So we had to put the drops in, then you have to mix it with different solutions, and yeah, all in being sure nothing's getting contaminated and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was one of the examples, which was really fun to do. And then you can look at it under the microscope and see, all the cells, and yeah, it was quite fun, honestly, not gonna lie. Yeah.
True. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I remember like way back in biology class, like I always like loved lab and like microscopes and stuff. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
really cool you get to do that.
It's really fun, honestly, when it's that sort of thing. Sometimes you have to do like it's just like proteins and DNA, so you don't see anything. It's not as visual, I guess. It's not as exciting. You just get numbers as a result. But when it's something like more practical, I guess, it is quite exciting. And I did really enjoy doing those. So yeah.
Okay, and then going a bit back, like, so why did you choose to study biomedical science?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think I was in year 11 in the UK. That equates to year 11, which would be like 13, I think. And I swear I remember, I had a biology exam, and it was about viruses. So, and I remember I was really in pain. I was literally crying over the exam because I was not understanding anything. But then afterwards, literally just because of how interesting it was, like that section, it really, I guess it really fascinated me how such a tiny thing can potentially kill so many people. And then after that, I started buying loads of books about pathogens and that sort of thing, and things like, I don't know, for example, the bubonic plague, where it's like a bacteria literally wiped out a third of Europe, basically. And I don't know, it was very interesting how it's technically a living organism, for example, bacteria, but it's so tiny, but yet it can destroy so easily. So I thought it was really interesting, and obviously I also liked the fact that it was still in the medical field, so in a way I knew I was helping people. Just by being involved in anything medical related, I felt like, I don't know, I could somehow help people around the world, especially in people in like that are not in, like poorer countries, where obviously we have the privilege of, being able to afford vaccines and medication, but other countries don't, which is, yeah, a bit unfortunate. So yeah.
But see, I actually absolutely love that, because you said that you kind of saw it when you were like quite young. 13, 14 is quite young. I actually have a similar experience. So it was a project in my like school where we had to look at, so it was indigenous tribe. They were called Cunayala in Panama, and it was so they had to move because their islands were like starting to go underwater. And I saw that and I was like, wow, okay. And I had to kind of brainstorm a solution to this. I didn't really get anywhere. But I was like, okay, I really want to somehow go into a field that like I can save people, because flooding is going to happen and rising sea levels is just going to keep happening. Exactly. So I really want to like go into this field, and that's how I got into like civil engineering, water management, and coastal like engineering.
Yeah, exactly. It's really similar actually. No, yeah, that's so nice though. But I like when people get into like a degree because of something like that, because it's nice, when it's, you have a fun reason.
I was motivate you too.
Because sometimes you're like, oh, I really don't want to study, but then it's like, oh, I have to, do this for the people. So you stop crying and you get on with it. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so then, what's your favorite part of biomedical science? Because there's different things in it.
Yeah, true. There's loads of different things. Again, I would have to say like one of my favorite modules was probably pathogens and disease, which was last year's module. Obviously, and I guess it was everything about the actual pathogens. So when it is about talking about specific diseases that aren't autoimmune diseases or that sort of thing, specifically like diseases like malaria, which is why I further did my dissertation on that. So yeah, I would have to, that's basically it, honestly. I just love them.
Okay. Honestly, perfect connection, because I was about to go into the dissertation or thesis, how I would call it. Because first of all, I'm a second year student, so that's coming soon.
Oh.
So yeah. So I mean, you usually do some year with core themes that you learn, and then when you finish your bachelor, everyone goes through a dissertation or a thesis. Yep. So, well, first of all, can you like walk us a bit through what you did, and a bit maybe some like key findings from your dissertation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I did a dissertation, but you could also do a lab-based research project. And I chose a dissertation just because I thought that was going to be easier. In hindsight, that's not true, but never mind. We learn from our mistakes. Anyway, so I guess what I did was we had to come up with hypothesis, I guess, so like a critical analysis question. And mine was basically about, obviously I wrote 11,000 words, so I'm trying to summarize this, but I basically wrote about the most effective preventative methods for malaria. So I mainly focused my dissertation on two vaccines. So one that is already approved, which is called RTS vaccine, and one that hasn't been approved yet, which is the R21 vaccine. Just very similar, to be fair. They both basically just... Do you want me to explain it? I just don't want to, like, it's a bit, I don't know
Sure,
how...
yeah, because we don't really know, like, I don't really know.
They basically work in the same way, it's just that they both have an antigen, so just a particle that, you know, your body just produces antibodies to, and then a protein from the actual parasite. And yeah, that's how your body triggers an immune response to when you're receiving it. And they're very similar. It's just that one of them has, I think, one more sequence, one extra antigen sequence. And I basically I had to do loads of research. I had to look at and read loads of primary research papers that had data on the number of clinical malaria cases and then I calculated it per 1,000 children because that was the most available data. It was really hard to find like research papers on this, especially because the R21 vaccine was not approved yet, so there were barely any papers on it. So it took a long time, but then with like statistical analysis and that sort of thing, I found that the R21 vaccine was 65% more effective, which is amazing. But yeah, it's likely going to be approved soon, I think. It just has to go through a few more clinical trials, and I don't know, it's a great news, to be fair. So I'm really excited about that. That's kind of how... Oh, and then we had a presentation we had to do too at one point. But yeah, that was basically the whole like process of the dissertation.
Okay, so now that we have a grasp of what you did, the thing is, okay, so now we want to go into maybe not as nice side, I guess, of it. So what was, I guess, the biggest challenge that you weren't expecting when you started your bachelor dissertation and then you went through it?
Well, yeah, that's a good question because ironically, I thought it was just going to be, it's 11,000 words, that's a lot of words to do, time is going to be an issue. And it wasn't really the time because I did start really early. I was like on top of it at first. But I think it's mainly that I didn't realise how most people, all my friends and people in my degree, obviously wanted to choose a lab-based research project because it's more relevant to our degree. Because it is more practical, you know? So if you want to work in a lab, it makes sense to make a lab-based research project. So I chose a dissertation and realised I was basically on my own because no one else was doing it. And I think because people in the research project have the support of their peers, like the people in their group, because you're all allocated to like a specific group. So you have a group of around 5 people that are doing, you've got different results, but you're working on the same experiment. So you can all help each other out. It's the fact that I was completely by myself. And honestly, even my academic advisor, who's the person who's helping you out, is obviously not an expert in what you're doing your dissertation on. So obviously she didn't really know about the vaccines I was doing research on. So it was just feeling very alone and having to do everything by myself, which I guess that is uni. But obviously seeing all my friends being able to help each other out and me being completely by myself, I did have a few mental breakdowns along the way. So yeah, that was quite challenging and I didn't think that would happen. So yeah, in hindsight, I would have done a lab-based project if I could have done it, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you think it's maybe rewarding to like do something like as like, it's on your own, it's not in the lab, and it's something that you're clearly interested in? So did you find it also rewarding or not?
Yeah, I think at first I did. When I had my introduction, I was really excited and I was really happy that I could do it on something that I was actually passionate about, because this was one of the things that that made me want to do this degree. But the problem is, again, I think it's because the structure of my dissertation was different to the people who were doing a lab-based structure. So even the content technically and the way you're writing it is different. So I think that's what I struggled with. Like obviously the introduction was fine. But as soon as I had to try and find all the data, because they had their data, they produced their own results. I had to just read loads and loads of papers and try and collect data that you can actually use, because obviously as soon as one place has done their findings in a different country, or I don't know, they did it on a different age range or whatever, you had to exclude it already because it's not relevant to what I'm looking for. So it was just very difficult to also find everything that was relevant, and then also structuring the whole thing was very difficult because after a certain time we weren't allowed to ask for help from our advisors. So you had a deadline of when you could ask for help, and after that I think you had like a few weeks left and you had no help. So yeah, it was a bit challenging, but we did it in the end.
The process. And you made it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I want to go a bit to I want to go to like technology in research. So how do you think technology like is being used or impacts like the field of biomedical science, or what you've seen?
Right. I mean, I guess I can relate this a bit to like the coding thing I was doing, because in a way, I don't know if that's like counts exactly, but coding, for example, and using coding languages such as like Python and these sort of things, can be, I think, is extremely helpful for a lot of science, not only biomedical science, but a lot of research sciences, that sort of thing, because of things like I don't know, if we're helping like analyze data, like large sets of data, because a lot of time the problem is that you have like a massive amount of results, and obviously a human can't really process all that and analyze it. So by obviously coding it, you can like try and simplify it and make everyone's lives easier. But also, I was also thinking about this actually a few days ago because I'm doing the computing, right? And it's also things like security.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, obviously it's something extremely essential for the privacy of patients to make sure that all the data is stored and protected, and things like authentication and all that is made like, again, just so it's you protect the privacy of the patients, because again you are dealing with health and records of people. So there's that, and obviously the most relevant one I would say is the like genomic editing. So things like CRISPR and like that sort of thing, where it's I don't know if you know, like, have you heard of CRISPR and like the...
I have, yeah.
It's but things like that, it's actually really useful.
Ethical conversations.
Yeah.
That goes into something completely different, yeah.
Okay, leaving the ethical bit to the side, it is really useful though how you can potentially you can code for an RNA molecule of your choice that you want, like, wherever you want your DNA to be set, cut. And I don't know, I think that's pretty cool to be able to just code that. So, yeah, I think those are all things that link to biomed. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so now you're doing computing. You went from biomedical science to computing. How has the transition been?
It's been very different, not gonna lie. So I think, I mean, again, it's a year in, so it's more of I would call it like a course. Obviously, it's not masters. So I felt like it's easier. But again, I've just come from a third year biomedical, degree thing. So it was very intense, obviously, a few months ago. But at the moment, it's been okay, but again, very different, because I feel like all the biomed is more research based. So you do loads of research and then you write a whole essay on it, whilst computing seems more of a problem solving type of thing. So I feel like if someone would have done maths, for example, they would have found it very easy to go into computer science, because again, it works in a very similar way, in my opinion. But again, it's interesting and it's rewarding, I guess, because I do feel like I'm learning something completely new and something I haven't done before. So yeah, I don't regret it.
So it's quite different, but do you think that there's like skills from biomedical science that like kind of transfer or overlap, or not at all, or any that you can use for computing and vice versa?
I mean, I guess you have like very general skills, like, I don't know, like group work in a way, because there is a lot of that. Obviously in labs you have to work with your lab group, like in our weekly sessions, and I guess I mean, the thing is, usually you wouldn't need that in computing, but obviously because I'm in university, you're forced to do things in groups. And also, I don't only do coding, but we also do web design, so which is completely different, and that is more of a group project, I guess, kind of thing. So I guess those skills can, are compatible in a way, but yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to a term of like called skill stacking. So pretty much you're combining like biomedical science with like now computing and like web development and stuff like that. I don't know if you're familiar with the term skill stacking. I'm gonna explain it anyway for any like viewer. Like Talk about it. It's pretty much the concept is like when an individual like makes themselves like more valuable, I guess. Well, subjectively, by gaining a wide range of skills instead of pursuing one skill. But then there's also a preconceived notion that when you educate yourself, for instance, you're doing biomedical science and then you might get like a master's and then you keep going on in one specific thing. Then you become a master of your field or a specific topic. But then this clashes with like skill stacking, so which gives like more variety of skill rather than mastering just one thing. So that's the difference between skill stacking. So then I guess my question is, in a world that's like constantly evolving and characterized by volatility, do you believe there's a significant value in skill stacking even in a scientific career or not?
I mean, personally, I would say that it has benefited me more. Obviously, I'm only in my 4th year, so I'm not looking for jobs at the moment, but I guess for me, definitely, just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to pursue straight out of my 3rd year. So obviously, if you are completely sure that that's the career path you want to go and do, then obviously I do think that maybe doing a master's or even pursuing a PhD is probably the better path. But for people who are unsure of what they want to do, or they want to or they want to even go into something, specific job, and then maybe change in a few years, because a lot of people some people that I've known that have graduated will go into something very different at first and then they'll change to something they actually want to pursue. So for things like that, I would say it's useful to do the skill stacking, because it's not only I have a biomedical degree, which yes, I don't have a doctorate or a master's, but I also will have experience in programming, which again, if I want to do software engineering or something suddenly, obviously it's going to be more useful to have that than be extremely specialized in biomedical science. So I guess it's also unique to each person and their circumstances. But and again, also it depends on the country really, because if I think about it, something I'm worried about is that, for example, in Spain, which is where I'm originally from, because everyone's so overqualified, a master's doesn't mean a lot. It's like everyone's expected to have a master's. So obviously I'm worried about not having one and not being able to find a job there. So it's not really like, oh, is it useful? Like really, as in like the actual knowledge you're learning, but is it going to be something that will make you employable? So it's a bit sad that way, but that's why I didn't want to do a master's just so I could find a job in Spain. I wanted to do something where I knew would help me and would enrich my like knowledge and, something that made more sense to what I wanted to do. But I don't know, because I want to stay in the UK probably, I'm not really worried about that at the moment, but yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go back because I think I totally kind of skipped about this when we were talking about kind of like the bachelor thesis and like the COVID period, which was difficult, I guess. So I kind of want to talk because you said that you didn't want to do something just because you had to, and you kind of wanted to do it because you wanted to. I was just wondering, like, while studying for your bachelor's in general, did you have moments when your motivation like dropped, and how did you keep your motivation to study?
Yeah, I definitely did. especially in my 2nd year of university, there was a point, I think it was in February maybe, where, I'm not kidding, I genuinely thought about dropping out, and I was very serious about it. Obviously, I think other things were also going on, like it wasn't just uni, but I do think that the 1st and 2nd year were very, as I said before, it's very general knowledge, so I wasn't studying what I actually signed up for, if you will. I wanted to specialise in bacteria, like the pathogens, which you would only study in 3rd year, so I was a bit unmotivated, I guess, in that aspect. But I guess it's really not sad, but I guess like something that did motivate me is just, first of all, I was thinking to myself, I want to finish the degree to also achieve something in a way, you know. And I feel like, again, also what we said before, the whole thing about that, even if it's not something I'm currently loving at the moment, like second year, specifically second year biomed, at the end of the day I will have a biomedical degree. And then again, with the whole thing about being able to help people, like I don't actually have to go in and do lab reports and work inside, like in a lab. I can still try and work in the medical field, but maybe in a different way. I don't know, maybe working for a company that works in any medical related, you know, things. So I guess it was just knowing that also you're not alone. I feel like most people have that moment in their degree where they just don't feel like they can do it. Also, uni makes you feel quite stupid a lot of the time, unfortunately. But as long, you know, but everyone admits that, you know, like I feel like everyone feels like that. So talking to a lot of people helps a lot. So like your friends and all that, and yeah, and also my parents, honestly, they just try to push me forward in a very supportive way. But they were saying how maybe it will get better, and I only had 1 year left. And to be fair, I'm really happy about it because my third year was much better. All the modules I did were way more interesting to me. So I'm really happy I pursued, you know, I hung on in there. But yeah. So.
No, yeah, that's very valid advice. Okay, and so the funny thing, well, not the funny thing, but so in engineering in general, something that, well, not going to be demotivating, but that is the reality, is that there's less, like, women than, like, the male ratio. And in my medical science, I don't think, like, in biology in general, maybe that's less the case, but now you're in computing. So I'm wondering, like, how does it contrast in terms of, like, female-male ratio?
Yeah, well, it is very different. To be fair, I didn't even think of it. I don't know, because I guess it's because I did a biomedical-based course. I was surrounded by women because it's our lecturers did actually tell us that I think 60% of people in biomed are women, like at our university. So obviously, that was very normal to me, and it was a bit of a shock, to be fair, to come this year and to sit down in my lectures and then just be surrounded by men. It was definitely a bit shocking. But I think something that really helps is that most of my lecturers are women. And I think that really, I guess in that sense, I didn't feel like I wasn't able to do it, you know, because like, oh, it's so intimidating, it's all men around me. And again, I've had two of my closest friends who I go with are also women. So I guess we have that support, and I see them doing their work and also getting good grades. So why couldn't I do that? But it was very shocking, to be fair. I've never experienced that before. Because to be fair, like last year, there were moments where we would leave our lectures and then you would see like a massive amount of men just going in, and you would be like, oh, that's the computer science people, or like, oh, I'm sure that's physics or engineering, you know, like you would know that that's the engineering because there were no girls to be seen, which is a bit sad, to be fair, but, you know, it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So thank you for coming on. And I mean, it's important because it's like what you've spoken today about bachelor thesis and like obstacles. I mean, it's life. There are like obstacles in everything, and it's not always like a linear or everything's always great. And it's also university. That's how it is.
It's really
but
not.
There are great moments, and like being able to like follow what you want is also very cool. So
no, yeah, and I think something that I'd love to emphasize is the fact that I think we all assume that everyone around us is doing better than we are. In some way, I think there's a moment where people are always stressing, and that is so not the case, and that's something I learned at the end of my third year, actually, because I thought everyone had everything together, and everyone seemed like they were, you know, on top of everything. And only when we finished, I actually asked around, when we submitted our dissertation, I asked around, and everyone was asking for extensions for their dissertation. I know, so it's like, and I didn't even think about asking for an extension. I didn't even know that was like an option, and all these people were asking for it. So I feel like uni is great, but I feel like people should talk more about, you know, the fact that it's not easy, and you're not alone, you know, like you're really not. Everyone's in the same boat. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, please share it with your friends and the family. And stay tuned because in 2 weeks, the next episode will be released.